Hello and welcome to the Pup Mommy. You know, if you're like me, or maybe you're not like me, you kind of belong to a number of different social media groups that have all things dog connected with them. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. And one of the things that I know that I read about almost, I don't want to say constantly, but close to it, is when people write in about, well, should I take my dog to the vet? My dog is doing this, my dog is doing this, what should I do? And if you're like me and other experienced dog owners, you want to say, take the dog to the vet. So this is going to be a video about how to know when to take your dog to the vet. Because with over 30 years of experience and a stack this big of vet bills, I have plenty of experience with veterinarians. I'm going to leave timestamps next to every single topic that I'm going to talk about that I have experience in, and I hope that you'll find beneficial. So that way you don't have to watch the entire video unless you really want to. And you can just jump ahead to the topic that's of interest to you. And those include ears, eyes, paws and legs, Gastro, which is stomach and intestinal, lumps, bumps, and tumors, seizures, skin irritations, and I think what else is there anything else? No, I think I covered that's about it. Now, first of all, let's talk about ears. If your dog has ears that are red, stinky, he's always itching, shaking his head, off to the vet you go. Why? Because that's probably an ear infection, and sometimes those ear infections can go deep. Now, yes, there are topicals that you can use and apply yourself, but what the vet will do is they instead will actually do a nice deep cleaning of the ear, actually swab it, take a look at it, see if there really is a raging ear infection and what it is, and then apply ointments and give you antibiotics. Easily cured. No problem at all. It's just a quick vet visit and your dog will thank you for it. Now, the other thing to keep in mind also is that sometimes those ear infections are caused by allergies to food. So you may also want to think about changing your dog's food, especially if you have a chicken diet, because chicken is notorious for creating allergies, not only in the ear, but in skin as well. The next area is eyes. Now with eyes, eye infections can be just topical, like a scratch to the cornea, or it can be serious where your dog may need surgery. And usually dogs that have eye infections are usually the dogs like Boston Terriers and pugs with those little round bug eyes. They seem to get into everything, and they seem to be injured more frequently. But any dog can have an eye infection. And if you happen to notice that your dog is kind of laying low and it's squinting and the eyes are watering, you know, eye infections can be very serious and they're painful. So off again you go to the vet. The vet will most likely take a good look at your eye, like an eye doctor would, stain the eye, look at the stain, and then if it's just something that a little cornea scratched or there's a little problem with the lens, you're going to get some antibiotics and some cream to put in the eye, and within a few days, a week at most, your dog is going to be fine. Unless, of course, it's something that, like what my little chipper encountered, because he was ball crazy and always seemed to have eye injuries with balls. He ended up one day having to have, like, what do they call that, non-invasive eye surgery because of a problem behind the retina. So again, eye injuries are not something to try and cure yourself. Next, we move on to legs and paws. If you happen to notice that your dog is limping or your dog is holding its paw up, the first thing that you want to do is simply take a look at the paw, because sometimes the dog may have cut it on something or the dog may have caught something in the fur inside. It could be a thistle, it could be something very easily that you can remove with no problem whatsoever. On the other hand, if your dog is limping consistently and can't seem to climb the stairs, can't get onto the sofa or a chair, and is visibly in pain, then again, off to the vet you go, because it could be any number of reasons. It could be a hip dysplasia that the dog is suffering from. It could have a torn ACL or a partial tear to the ACL. Could have a bone chip fragment that suddenly broke off. And in fact, my Olympia, my German Shepherd, she had all of those. So that's how I kind of am familiar with sometimes what to look for. Another thing to keep in mind also is if you have a large breed dog and that large breed dog is somewhere around 9 months, 12 years old, or even as much as 15 to 18 months old, and the dog is lame and the dog is exhibiting different kinds of, discomfort, Keep in mind that large breed dogs are sometimes prone to Panosteitis, and Panosteitis is a painful dog growing disease when the marrow in the bones kind of just, look it up on the web. It's difficult to explain, but it is a painful disease, and it can jump from leg to leg to leg. Large breed dogs such as Great Danes, they can be St. Bernards, they can be Newfoundlands. My German Shepherd had it, Zarina had it. It's in large breed dogs when they simply grow too fast and the bones for some reason can't seem to catch up. Again, it's something that your your vet can prescribe, and don't be like me and end up with in emergency at 11:30 at night with Zarina. I mean with your dog. You don't want to do that. Now we move on to gastro problems. Gastro problems are anything dealing with primarily the stomach, the intestine, the colon, and usually you know your dog has gastro problems because either the dog has stopped eating or has lost its appetite, or there's always bouts of diarrhea. So when you encounter something like that, it's not because your dog is a finicky eater. It can be for a number of reasons. Now keep in mind with diarrhea, the diarrhea is something that actually can dehydrate your dog. So if diarrhea is going on during a period of days, this is something very serious, and it can cause greater problems if it's not treated earlier. Sometimes it just takes a call to the vet, and the vet can prescribe something, sometimes even an over-the-counter medication. But more likely the vet is going to want to see the dog is going to get a dose of Serenia, and it's going to get some antibiotics, as well as the vet will want to take a sample to see what is curing the diarrhea, or what is causing the diarrhea, I should say. Now, my Boston just a month ago got into Giardia, which is really difficult to get rid of, but it is something that can be done with Panicure and Fortiflora, and by keeping the dog clean. But it catches it out from water, it can catch it from the grass, it can catch it any number of areas. So keep that in mind, and again, this is not something that you're going to solve necessarily yourself. If you happen to see, like for example, if you happen to see, it's a topic, you know, if you happen to see blood in your dog's urine or in the fecal matter, this is something also very serious, and it can be a urinary tract infection. Again, you're not going to cure it yourself. It's off to the vet you go. But the most serious of all is that if your dog loses its appetite and stops eating, and this happens over a period of a couple of days, just no appetite, just not overall miserable, the last thing that you want to encounter, but you really have to consider very seriously, is that the dog ate something and now it's lodged itself in its intestine and or stomach, and you're not going to get it through with canned pumpkin. Most likely this is called a foreign object, and foreign object is ka-ching, because you can't get it to pass through. Your dog is going to need surgery. And this is something that, again, is very serious. And please keep in mind that when your vet takes x-rays, not every single foreign object is going to show up on an x-ray. I have the death certificate to prove it, because I lost my Spunky, his blood work was normal, his x-rays were normal, and yet he died when a foreign object perforated one of his intestines, peritonitis set in, and there he was. You know, I told the vet, I'm going to write blood work normal, x-ray normal, I'm going to write that on his tombstone, because I have no dog. And also, it happened to my dog Noelle. Same thing. Dog ate something. We saw something on an x-ray. We thought, well, you know, the vet said, let's see if we can medically manage it. It looks like it's moving through. 4 days later, dog's on the operating table, can't save it. And 2:30 in the morning, I'm there holding him as the vet euthanizes him. So between the medical management and the surgery, I spent $4,500, and I had no dog. So please do not be stupid like I was. Immediately act on it if something is wrong. If something, just advocate for your dog. Don't make the mistake that I did. Now we're going to move on to lumps and bumps. Now, lumps and bumps can happen and they happen almost on every dog. Some of the lumps and bumps look like what I'm showing you over my shoulder. They just appear out of nowhere. You almost always want to squeeze them all the time, kind of like, you know, a pimple or a blemish. But don't do that. Most of these lumps and bumps that appear, Nabucco had one, Zarina had one, they're known as histiocytomas. But just to be sure, you run your dog over to the vet. The vet will take a needle aspiration, like a biopsy, send it out just to make sure. 99% of these histiocytomas are benign. They automatically fall off by themselves, nothing to worry about. However, there are also bumps that appear out of nowhere. My chipper was a mast cell tumor magnet. Mast cell tumors are something that are extremely serious and can be fatal if they're not caught in time. They're normally hard, they're normally yucky looking, they can change shape. Chipper had 4 that were cancerous, that were grade 2, and he had 1 that was benign. If they're caught in time, they're not a death sentence. The only thing that killed Chipper was a brain cancer, was a brain glioma, but he survived all of the other mast cell tumors. But pay attention to lumps and bumps on your dog. Don't wait them out. Don't. Don't wait them out, because it's going to be, because the point being, what can cost you a vet visit and maybe some antibiotics and x-rays and so forth, and it's just maybe $150, $200, at least by me, that's what it costs. Because when you wait it out, that's when the injury or the ailment becomes aggravated, and the next thing you know, it's $2,000, $3,000, and you don't even know if your dog is going to survive. Now, since we were talking, or I was talking about lumps and bumps, the other type of problem that dogs encounter, and it's not only older dogs, keep in mind that they're younger dogs as well, are neurological disorders. And the neurological disorder can be having to do with the spine, or it can have something to do with the brain. One of the things that is common among dogs that you can see, and I can kind of get a sense as to if something is going on, is that if your dog, and again, be older, younger. I lost a dog to inflammatory brain disease known as meningoencephalitis. I lost Poco, and she was only 4.5 years old. Her sibling, Chipper's brother was lost at age 5. So you see, it's not just older senior dogs that this can happen to, but you can easily see that something is going on with a couple of ways. One, of course, is the dreaded seizure. And seizures can be taken care of. Some seizures can be kept under control through medication. Other seizures are more indicative of something that's far more serious, such as meningoencephalitis or brain tumor. And those seizures, you're going to know them. Trust me, you'll know them, because they're called cluster seizures. Any time your dog seizure, you feel absolutely helpless, but cluster seizures are the worst. They're just the worst, and they usually are indicative of something that's gravely wrong with your dog. Another way you can tell something is off with your dog is when your dog is walking and then standing still. Is your dog's hind leg or front leg slipping out from under it? It just kind of slips and slides off to the side. Or your dog is walking around aimlessly like it doesn't know where it's at. Or it's just kind of, the behavior is just so off. Now, normally when something like this occurs, you're going to need to see a neurologist, and neurologists are going to want to take MRIs. So full warning that this is going to be something that could be potentially costly, but you have to know what you're dealing with. Finally, we come to skin irritations, and sometimes skin irritations can be allergies where at certain times of the year dogs are going to be licking themselves, they're going to be scratching, they're going to be itching. Same thing with, when people go through the allergies in the spring and the fall or the summer or whatever, dogs have these as well. What you have to be careful though and watch is that dogs can sometimes get really aggressive with their licking, and you end up with lick granulomas, and then you can also end up with dogs who are really fearsome lickers, and they can lick all the way down into the muscle and the bone. Now, my German Shepherd, Olympia, she had allergies, but she also was constantly licking one of her hind paws. Had her to the vet a number of times, actually did physical therapy and laser treatment on one of her other paws that she started licking on. I think it was the right front. That cured it, but the left one was just really bad. And what you have to really watch for that, again, is that when they start licking, that they don't lick themselves into hot spots. Now, some of the skin irritations can be taken care of with an over-the-counter, what I use is called Vetericin, Really good stuff. You can spray it anywhere. It doesn't sting, it doesn't stain, it doesn't anything. And it's kind of like a topical treatment. It really does work. My girlfriend uses it on her horses. That's how I got introduced to it. There's also topical creams and ointments too that your doctor or your vet can prescribe for you. But also what you need to do also is also, as I said earlier, really watch how they're licking, because actually my German Shepherd Olympia, I lost her in the COVID year of 2020 when she started licking something in her right hind leg, and from the time that she started licking that wound, it became a wound, and within a matter of 1 week she was dead. And it got so bad that, I mean, you know, even if you put a cone head on her, I put on creams. By the time I sent in photos to the emergency vet, she said, get her over here. I got her over, and she had licked down into the muscle, and sepsis was setting in. And actually, there's a little bit more of a story to that, because 2.5 months earlier, I had lost my Zarina, my 12-year-old Zarina, and she was Olympia's sister, and Olympia was also 12 years old. So I said to myself that I think Olympia wanted to be with Zarina in heaven, and that's why she, out of nowhere, started suddenly licking, and licked herself a wound that took her life. But there's all other kinds of skin irritations that your dog may have as well. Sometimes they're in the private parts area, and there are, again, you know, your vet can prescribe over the phone. You can prescribe things like Dermalone and other types of ointments that you can put on, so you don't necessarily have to have a hefty vet bill. So actually, I think I've come to the end of what could possibly go wrong with your dog, and when to take your dog to the vet and when not to take your dog to the vet. And actually, what I'd like to leave you with is always err on the good side. I know vets are expensive. Trust me, I know. But, you know, it's what I said earlier. It's either $100 now or it's $1,500 later or more. So always err on the side of cautiousness. You know, part of owning a dog is when it's like you have to accept this expense and cost of owning a dog. It's not only just the food and it's not only just the toys, but it's the health as well. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them for me below. If you want to contact me one-on-one, if you have any questions, I'll leave my name and my contact information in the description. And I hope I've been able to be some sort of help for you. Again, thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate it. So don't forget to click and subscribe. Bye for now.